Well, to talk a bit more about yesterday's attack and the consequences, I'm joined by Andreas Krieg. He's from the Defence Studies Department at King's College in London. Thank you for joining us. Now, Saudi Arabia has the biggest per capita spend on defence in the world. A lot of people are asking today why it was incapable of defending this vital oil infrastructure.
Very good question. I mean, if you look at the massive amount of money that's spent and capacity of the security sector that is invested in Saudi Arabia to protecting the oil and gas sector, which is essentially the center of gravity of this country, which basically ensures the survival of Saudi Arabia, then you really ask yourself, how can a militia such as the Houthis kind of bypass or find vulnerabilities in the system to strike such a vital plant like the one in Abqaiq? Now, the answer to that is obviously mixed. On the one hand, I mean, we need to consider that the Houthis here have used multiple different flying objects to actually penetrate the air defense system of Saudi Arabia, and they've probably done so using more than one angle. I think that what we've seen is that is drones being flown from Yemen more than 750 miles to that particular location in Saudi Arabia. And at the same time, we also had cruise missiles being shot probably from southern Iraq into Saudi Arabia. Both of that coming at the same time. That kind of overkilled, if you will, the air defense system, specifically the early warning system, because Saudi air defense systems, which have been obviously provided by the Americans, are there to intercept medium and short-term, short-distance ballistic missiles, but they're actually not prepared to deal with these relatively low-tech drones and cruise missiles, and especially when they're shot at the same time. The problem here is one of coverage. The other problem is one of coordination between these early warning systems and those shooters that actually shoot down incoming missiles. And the third problem is obviously that they are not prepared. The system itself, the Patriot system, is very ill prepared for this type of ballistic missile and this type of drone attacks, kamikaze drone attacks being flown at these targets. So while this is definitely a key installation, I think more has to be done to train Saudi air defense systems to deal with what is essentially an asymmetric threat that comes from a vast network of Iranian surrogates.
Now, Iran denies having anything to do with this attack. What does the evidence tell us in terms of who made these missiles, who fired these missiles?
Now, the Houthis are obviously a self-sufficient militia. It's a movement that came about in northern Yemen over the last 20 years, really. So to say that they're just an Iranian proxy or a surrogate might somewhat tell only half of the story. But what is important here, when it comes to the technology, Iran plays a very, very vital role. So Iran's support for the Houthis has really stepped up since 2014, and not just on the operational level within Yemen, but in particular in terms of supporting the development of new ballistic missile systems as well as new drones. Because if you see where the Houthis were and where the Yemeni military was as well just 5 to 10 years ago and where they are today, you see that it has changed dramatically. And that technology is not an indigenous one. This is not a technology that can be developed under the circumstances that we have in Yemen. So it's quite clear that that technology has come from Iran, has been provided by the Iranians to the Yemenis, to the Houthis, and the Houthis obviously make it themselves. They basically use that technology and make it their own kind of system, which gives the Iranians a degree of plausible deniability. So I think the investigation that has been launched now will obviously say and will show in Saudi Arabia whether these missiles were actually shot from Iran, which I don't think was the case, because then the Iranians would lose plausible deniability, and then we'll basically ascertain where this technology is coming from. And there are already, from what we've seen from the debris of some of these missiles, there are a lot of similarities with the drone and missile technology that has been developed by Iran. So there's a massive overlap. But despite the evidence, the Iranians can always hide behind their surrogate network and say, you know, there is plausible deniability. We have nothing to do with it.
All right, Andreas Krieg, thank you very much indeed. And you can buy Andreas Krieg's book. It is called Surrogate Warfare, The Transformation of War in the 21st Century. There you can see that there. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.